Colin Canet here for Woodworkweb. Today I want to talk about Dado Sets or Dado Blades. There's two different kinds of Dado Sets. The first kind, and the best kind, is one that consists of inside and outside blades like this, two different blades, and on the inside are chippers, and there will be a series of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 depending on the width. You will also have shims in most cases that will help that you will use to fine-tune to adjust the width. The other kind of dado cutter is something they call a wobble wheel, and this is about a 4 or 5 inch wheel, and the way it works, when it sits in your arbor of your table saw or your radial arm saw if you're cutting dados with that, rather than spinning true, it actually wobbles. So it's offset so that instead of spinning true, it does this sort of a thing as it spins through. Now, both of these dado apparatus both make dado cuts, and they have their pros and cons. This is not the most ideal dado, and here's why. So if we were to look at the end cut of a dado, and that's what these dados do with the two cutting blades on either side and the chippers in the middle, they make a nice flat cut. So if we were to look at the end of a board, that is how that dado would look. In fact, that dado would actually be, with a good set of blades, it will actually have a little bit of an uplift cut in those corners. Instead of being absolutely flat, it'll cut just a little bit deeper in the corners. The blades are designed to do that. But it's absolutely flat in here. Now what a wobble wheel does, and the wider it gets, the more accentuated it gets, is it creates an arc because it's rotating as it's going through the saw, it's doing this sort of thing as it's making the cut. Now that's obviously exaggerated, but that's what a wobble wheel does, is it cuts an arc instead of a flat top. Now, if it's a narrow cut, it's not bad, but when it becomes, as it gets wider and wider, you don't get a nice fit for your shelf or whatever, your slide for your drawer, whatever you're using to put in that dado. So wobble wheels have their place. They have lots of other things that they can do other than cutting dados, and for cutting narrow dados, they're fine. For wide dados, there's other choices that are better. Before we go and cut some dados, a couple things that I want to remind you of. First of all, if you buy a dado set, and the one that we have is a Freud, as you know, we are pretty strong advocates of Freud product, good quality products. You'll find with any dado set that you buy, or at least any good quality set that you buy, it will come with a little instruction, either an instruction manual or some kind of a piece of paper that will tell you how many chippers, what quantity, what width, and how many shims you need in order to make the dado as wide as you did. So when you're unpacking your dado set, make sure that you look for those instructions. They're very important. You will be referring to them throughout the life of that dado set. So let's go now and have a look at cutting some dados. So we'll just run a test strip on a scrap board so that you can see what a dado looks like. And there's the slot that we just cut in this scrap board. That's what a dado looks like. Now let's cut a dado to size. So no matter what kind of a dado you're cutting, you need to measure it. So what do you go to? Of course, your trusty measuring tape. But a measuring tape in a lot of cases is not going to be as accurate as you need. What you really want to get is a little micrometer. This is a little digital one. I think these are $12 or $15. And for cutting dados, this will save you a huge amount of time. So you measure your board to see how thick the dado wants to be, then that's the measurement that you make your dado. That's the width that you make your dado. Here's the board that I just cut the dado in, and here's the test board to put through that, and you can see that that slides very nicely in there. In fact, I can see from here that this board it's too wiggly in there. This wants to be tighter than that. So I'm going to cut another test strip. I'm going to take out one or two of those shims that are in there and cut another test strip. Here's the second test, and you can see that fits in there perfect compared to the first one. Now, how did I get it perfect the second time? A real easy trick. When I put this wood in and took all of the shims out, one of the shims fit perfectly in there. And that was the shim that I took out, which is what I used to make that. That is a perfect dado. That's exactly what you're looking for. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? We cut some dados, made some very accurate dado cuts. We learned how to use the shim to actually make them a little bit tighter. So, remember when you're making dados that your tape measure is probably not going to be as accurate as you need. Pick yourself up one of these little caliper measures. You can get them linear without the digital. This one's digital. I just find it easier to read and a little bit more accurate. It'll make your job of cutting dados quicker and easier. Make sure that when you're cutting dados, you do tests, because it's so easy to make a sloppy dado, and as soon as you make a sloppy dado, then you have to start gluing in pieces, and it makes your job an awful lot harder. So, I'm Colin Canet for Woodworkweb. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out our website for lots more tips and projects.